Okay, so this is a video tutorial on how to make a laser cut kiosk using Fusion 360 and Inkscape. So to get started, we need to kind of look at the 3D model of the touchscreen that we're going to be working with. And so the link for that is down below, and so you can copy and paste the link or just click on it. And we have, notice we'll have Fusion open, we've got Inkscape open, and so once this loads up, we're going to click Open in Fusion 360. Okay, and we'll go ahead and click Open. All right, and here we go. And here's the model of our touchscreen that we'll be modeling our kiosk around. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn this off just for now. We're going to get to that in just a little bit. But what I want to do is I want to kind of think about the constraints of the overall kiosk design that we're going to be doing. It's a desktop kiosk, so it's going to be a little bit smaller than usual. But we're going to start off with a bounding rectangle of 12 inches by 12 inches because that's just the maximum size of material that we can cut with. So I'm going to hit R for rectangle, and I'm going to cut along this plane here, and I'm going to make this 12 inches by 12 inches. Okay. And so we know that we're going to be cutting out of 12 inch by 12 inch panels of wood, but we need to make sure that whatever we're cutting is actually smaller than this piece of wood. And so I'm going to start to sketch out the design of my kiosk just using the line tool. And I'll start down here, and I'm going to come up about 10 inches out here, and I'm going to come out and, maybe something right about here. Okay, so it's going to kind of slope down. And then I'm going to do another line from here, kind of out to the base, maybe out to about 11 inches. And at this point then, I know that I want to kind of connect these two dots together. And I could just do that with a straight line, but that wouldn't be as interesting. And so I'm going to make this curvilinear so that we can use the Curfing skill that we're learning today. And I'm going to click here, and I'm going to come down just a little bit and click again, and then out here to connect to this line. And once I've connected, I can hit Enter, and I can now see that I've got a nice curvilinear shape right there that gives this this kiosk a little bit more interest in terms of its geometry. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and delete these lines because I don't really need them anymore. They're just guidelines. And here I can see kind of the shape of the side of my kiosk is going to be. This is the side profile. Now at this point, though, we have to kind of keep in mind that we're making this out of panelized materials. And so I need to think about the thickness of the materials for each of these sides. And we're going to be using foam core and wood. And so the thickness of that is 0.2 inches. And so to model that thickness, we can use the offset tool. And so if I come in here and click on this, I can say 0.2 inches. And you can see how it kind of jumps to the inside. I want it to jump to the outside just a little bit, so I can click flip here. And it adds that thickness to the outside. So if I click OK, now I can see that I've actually got kind of two lines here representing the thickness of the wood. But you'll notice how these joints just run together. They're not actually separated. And so we want to fix that. And the way that I'm going to do that is by using my line tool once again. And I'm going to start from one edge, and I'm going to run it all the way up until it jumps across to this far line. So now I can see that I've separated this out. And I'm actually going to go in the other direction, okay, out here, until I've got a single solid piece that's going to be the top facing wood. Okay, we're going to do that on the bottom as well. Okay, so I'm going to kind of start at this corner and just come all the way across until I intersect with the line there. And then I'm going to go back and do the same. And so now I have a single piece there. And we can see how each piece is now distinct from the other with these flat edges. Okay, so this is looking pretty good, but now it's time to extrude this out into a full shape. And so I can do that by hitting the E key for extrude. Okay, and I'm going to bring mine out about 10 inches. Seems to be pretty good. Okay, and so there's the top face. Okay, I'm going to bring back my sketch here and hit E again. And I'm going to extrude this out 10 inches, but you'll notice that it wants to kind of join these pieces together, and we don't want that. We want them to stay separated. And so we're going to click, instead of join here, we're going to click new body, and you can see how now it's representing them as two single pieces, and that's good. That's what we want. Okay, let's go ahead and do that again for this bottom face. Again, bring it out 10 inches. as a new body. Click OK. And then this one comes out 10 inches as a new body. And here we can see that we've got all 4 pieces that are going to make up the top, back, bottom, and front faces of our piece. Okay, but now we need to think about the sides. Well, the sides are going to be this interior face here. And so if I click Extrude and I go 0.2 inches, and again, I want to make sure that's a new body, you can see that I can create a solid side for our kiosk there. But that leaves this side open. So let's go ahead and get this closed up as well. Now, since this is pretty much the exact same piece as this, I'm going to use the move command. And so I'm going to select this face and hit M for move. And I'm going to create a copy by clicking this box here. And I can bring a new piece out here and click OK. And so we can see now that I've got a second piece. Now I want to set it in right here in this corner. And so if I take a close look, really what I want is I want this corner right here to be lined up with this corner right here. And so I can do that by, again, selecting this body and hitting M for move. And I can choose point to point. And if I select this point here, and I zoom in here, and if I can get it to choose that one point there, there we go. Then I can click OK. And now we can see that we are in business. It's lined up perfectly on all sides. All right, so this is looking pretty good. Let's go ahead, and we know that we're going to need to be able to run a wire into the back of this. And so let's go ahead and add a circle that we could pass the power cord through. And so I'm going to hit C for circle. I'm going to click on the back side of this. And I'm going to find the center just by kind of exploring along here. Should be around here somewhere. Oh, it snaps on it every once in a while. Okay, should be right there. And I'm going to place it right about here. And it's going to be 0.5 inches in diameter. And I can hit the E key for extrude. And I'm going to pull it back through the face. And that's going to do that cut operation. So it's red to show you that it's cutting into the piece of wood. And we click OK. And you can see now we've got a hole that our cord can pass through. Okay, so that's pretty good. But we still need to kind of get our screen poking through the center here. So let's go ahead and bring our screen back into play. And so I'm going to make it visible. And I'm going to select it and hit M to move it again. This time I want to do a free move. And so I'm going to do that one more time. So select it, hit M, and free move. And I'm going to drag it out here where I can actually see it. Okay. Now at this point, we notice we've got maybe a little bit of a problem where the angle of our screen is not the angle of the top of our kiosk, and this is where we want the screen to go. So if I inspect, I can click on this piece and see that there's a 73.61 degree angle there. And so I know that the angle that this is at is going to be the complement of that. So I can take 73.61 and subtract that from 90 and get negative 16.39. And so that's how much I need to rotate my screen. So again, if I hit the move key and I select my screen, okay, I'm going to rotate it. Double check that angle, negative 16.39. So negative 16.39. Okay, and now I know that that angle will perfectly match up with the surface here. And so if I begin to maneuver it around, and let's take a look over here and get it perfectly centered where I want it to go. Okay, so I'm going to come across. Right about there looks good. Yep, like how that's looking. Okay, and now I just need to make sure that a good bit of it is poking through. So let's lower it down negative. It's a bit too much. Not enough. There we go. That seems to be just poking through, which is what I want. Just make sure that looks good. I'm going to bring it just a little bit more, maybe 0.1. 5. There we go. All right, so now I can see that that screen is just poking through, but if I turn off the visibility, I can see I actually haven't made a hole for that. And so let's go ahead and take care of that now. The way that we can do that is by using the Combine tool. And so the target body, the thing that we want to cut into, is this panel here. The tool body is our screen. And you can see we're doing that cut operation. We do want to keep the tool, though. We want to make sure that we don't get rid of the screen when we make this cut. So make sure that this box is checked. And if I click OK, again, maybe it doesn't look like it did anything, but if I turn my screen off, I can now see that there's a hole in our top plate that will fit the screen. We do want to make sure that that's wide enough, though, in order to fit the screen into, so we need to give it a little bit of machining tolerance. The way that we can do that is we can click the Press Pull tool, and I'm going to come in and select on this face, this face, this face, and this face. So I've got all of those selected. And we need to bring it out just a little bit. And so I think I'm going to bring it out maybe, probably, 0.05 of an inch. And so 0.05 of an inch. And I need to make sure it's going bigger, so negative 0.05 of an inch. And so now if I bring the screen in and I look, I should see that there's a little bit of wiggle room along the edges, and that looks okay. And that'll be important when we're kind of, cutting this so that it comes in and has enough wiggle room to fit in without having to jam the screen through. Okay, so at this point, this is looking pretty good. Doesn't really look much like our kiosks will, so let's go ahead and think about the overall appearance of this, and the way that we can do that is by going into the Render tab. Okay, if we bring in a Render and we click on Appearances, we can see we've got lots of materials that we can choose from. And so I'm going to kind of finish mine in a rich mahogany. And so we can drag this material onto here to make it look nice. Okay. And then for my screen, I'm going to choose this glass with medium color to kind of make it look okay. And so we'll kind of pose that in our design. I'm going to do a quick save here. And let's go ahead and render. And I'm going to choose just a pretty popular, 1 megapixel, 1 local render, standard quality. This is just for a demonstration purpose. I'd recommend that you choose something that's a little bit kind of higher resolution, be good for your documentation. But I'm going to click render and have this go ahead and start on that render. You can see it starting up over here. Okay. While we do that, let's go back here, and we're going to wait for that to render. We need to get this into a form that can be laser cut now. So in order to do that, we're going to take this one panel at a time and create a DXF file that we can send over to the laser cutter. The way that we can do that is by right-clicking a face. We'll start with the top face here. And I'm going to do Create Sketch. And that's going to create a new sketch down here that I'm going to click on and rename Top. Now at this point then, I can actually save this as a DXF. And so in order to do that, I'm going to create a new file, or new folder rather, on my desktop called Kiosk. And so if I right-click and do Save as DXF, I can go into my little kiosk folder that I just created, and I can call this Top. Okay, at that point then, I can finish this sketch, deselect, and let's choose another face. Let's go over to the left-hand side here. So I right-click, Create Sketch. I rename that. I'll call that Left. I'll right-click, Save as DXF, call it Left, and Save, and Finish Sketch. Let's go to the right-hand side. Right-click, Create Sketch, call it Right. Right-click, Save as DXF, Right, Finish Sketch. Let's go to the back. Right-click, Create Sketch, back, Save as DXF, Finish Sketch. Bottom. All right, so you'll notice that we've got almost all of our faces except for this front face right here. And so this is going to be our curve face, and we can't really export this as a DXF just yet. We need to actually use a method that we're going to be using in Inkscape to create this file so that it can bend. What we do need to know, though, is we do need to know the length of this arc here. And so if I click on this, and notice I'm clicking on the outside arc, you'll see that it is 8.28 inches. And so we're going to need to remember that. That's going to be really helpful for us here in just a second. I also need to know that the width of it, at least as I defined it, was 10 inches. And so I've got 8.28 by 10 inches. So with that, I'm going to pop over here into Inkscape, and I'm going to change my document properties. I'm going to set this over to inches, and I'm going to say 12 by 12 inches is kind of the space that I'm working within. And let's go ahead and make a rectangle that is 8.28 by 10 inches. So rectangle tool, come over here, change this into inches, and I'll say the width is going to be 10 inches, height is 8.28 inches. Okay, well, let me just make sure that that actually took 10, 8.28. There we go. Okay, so now I've got that panel. I'm going to position it at x equals 0, y equals 0, so it's up here in the upper left-hand corner, and that's going to be important. And now what I'm going to do is, with kerfing, we're actually going to remove material in little slits that will allow the material to bend. In order to do that, we're going to make our first cut, and we're just going to make a line. So I'm going to use the line tool over here, and I'm just going to hold down the Control key and click Enter. And let's go ahead and set this line to be a very specific length. We're going to make its length to be 2.5 inches. And I'm going to put it at x equals 0, y equals 0.25. So it's going to be right here up along this edge. Okay? And I'm going to copy and paste this again. And I would really like it to kind of be pretty close to this one. I'm going to actually line them up. But I want them to be right on top of it, because otherwise we'd just be cutting through our material. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to put them 1.25 inches apart. And so if I look at the x-coordinate, it's at 2.5. Well, 2.5 plus 1.25 is 3.75. And so that'll space it apart, like so. I'm going to paste another one, and we do the same thing. I'm going to kind of bring it up close to this, and I'm going to add 1.25 to this. So that's going to take me to 7.5. And you'll actually see that in this case it goes perfectly all the way across the edge, and that's okay. If it goes off, that's fine, just a little bit, but in this case the math worked out to where we are perfectly spaced apart. Okay, so next thing that we're going to do is we're going to grab two of these and copy and paste them here. And I'd really like to kind of put them kind of relatively centered here. And so to do that, what I can do is I can kind of line them up over here. And at this time, I want them to be 0.5 inches down, but I want to be really thoughtful about kind of how I'm lining them up. And so if I bring them in about 1.75, we're actually going to bump it just a little bit more. Let's do 825. There we go. So I'm going to set the x-coordinate of both of these as 1.825. And you can see how that kind of centers them pretty nicely with these other curve cuts. Again, what I can do is I can copy and I can paste this whole thing. And now I can set x equals 0 and y equals 0.75 to make another pass of these. And if I copy, paste that again, go to x equals 0 and y equals 1.25. I can see that I'm just repeating this pattern over and over again. And so again, we'll bring it in here, x equals 0, y equals 2. Oh, it looks like that one laid right on top of the other ones, and I don't want to do that just yet. I want that to be x equals 0 and y equals 2.25. There we go. So that fits in nicely. All right, we'll go again. Bring them down. And you can always kind of guess the math a little bit because it's always increments of 0.25, so this is probably 4.25. Okay, and so you can see that pattern just runs the whole length of the material. So at this point, let's go ahead and save. So I'm going to call this Kerf. I'm going to save the original SVG just in case I need to make any edits later on. But ultimately, I'd love to save this as a DXF, and that's going to be DXF R14. We'll call it kerf.dxf. I want to make sure I'm exporting as inches and that neither of these boxes are checked. And so if I click OK, what I should be left with is I've got my folder that has my back, bottom, I've got my kerf.dxf that we're going to send over to the laser cutter, left, right, and top. So I've got all of the pieces that I need in order to laser cut my box. So let's go do that next. Okay, so we've got all of our pieces laser cut. You can see I've kind of laid out in the configuration that they're going to be going in. And with this kerf cut, you'll notice that these aren't etched lines. These are actually cut all the way through. And that's what allows it to kind of have that curvature that will take its shape in our final design. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm actually going to save the bottom for last, but I'm going to use it as kind of a platform to build off of. But that's going to be the last piece that we attach. And we're going to start kind of mocking up our overall design. And so I'm going to start with these two outside pieces, so this side piece and this back piece. And I'm just going to use some painter's tape. And this is a technique that works with both foam core and wood. And so even when you're doing this wood, you're going to tape the pieces together just to kind of hold them in place while you figure out where everything needs to go. And you can refer back to your Fusion 360 model if you're not sure about kind of where all the pieces overlap. It's really important to make sure that you get those pieces in the right orientation, butting up against each other in the right way. Otherwise, nothing's going to go together the correct way. Okay. And so let's go ahead and do this piece here. You'll also kind of figure out the importance of making sure that you're using flat materials. If your materials are bowed at all, this is going to become a really tricky design to work on. And you'll notice that with your laser cut wood, if it's not sitting flat against the laser cutter, you'll find that you'll have to do multiple passes to get it to cut correctly. So at this stage, there's no such thing as too much tape, so feel free to kind of join it up as much as you need to. Okay, now we can add this top piece here. That works nicely. We can bring in these side pieces now. Crooked, so we'll shorten that up just a bit. Needs to come up a little bit more to make sure it's nice and flush. There we go. All right. Now at this point, then we're going to lay in our kerf. Okay. Up under this lip, nice and straight. Okay, and we're going to push it in, tape it down. This one's a little bit short, so we're going to Just straighten it up just a little bit. There we go. Nice and flat. And then it's ready to go onto our base. Okay. So that looks almost perfect. Okay. Now at this point, I've not glued anything together, but now I am ready to go in, and I would suggest using high temp hot glue, and I would particularly recommend using the very powerful industrial hot glue gun, and that again, that works on both the foam core and on the wood as well, to go ahead and glue all of this in. One thing that you may actually kind of double check on is double check your fitment of your screen before you kind of glue everything in. You'll want to make sure that you've got a nice good fit coming through on your screen. And you can either increase or decrease the width of this. So it looks like I've got a little bit too much space, and so I may actually decrease the amount on this. But once you have it fit the way that you want it, what you can do is go ahead and mark these holes, these 4 holes, and drill them through, and that way you can attach your screen to your wooden version of this with screws. And so once you have this all put together, then you can run your power cord through it, seal it up, and that'll be it. That'll be your kiosk.